Welcome, Buckeye fans, to another episode of Buckeye Rising. I'm Ace, and I'm here to talk to you about things all good and bad about the game this week. We're going to deep dive into last week's game against Texas. It was a hard-fought win, definitely, 14-7. We're going to talk about some of the highs, some of the lows, and just about everything in between. All in the format of a game such as we know and love. All right, let's get ready to kick off. This is Buckeye Rising. So, for the first quarter, we're going to talk about offense, what the offensive drive did this week and what they didn't do. First off, quarterback play. Julian Sane came out and I think did everything that could be expected of him. He didn't play outside of himself. He kept himself contained, didn't throw any interceptions. He kept his eyes down the field when he was looking. I do believe that he had other opportunities to launch passes even further, but maybe the coaching staff told him not to do it, to stay within the boundary of 10, 20 yards and look for your checkdowns as often as you can. It seemed to be the smart play for the majority of the game. Definitely carried us through the first half very easily. I would say that in the future, going forward, if we're going to be like sitting around going, hey, when is this big play offense going to show up? When's the old Ryan Day going to show up? Like, hopefully soon. We got Grambling State coming in next week. That would be the perfect opportunity to start seeing what we could do down the field. Even if it doesn't connect, it would be nice to see how big his arm is, how accurate he is down the field, and what his thought process can be. Today, it was very simple. Texas was a number one team, very vaunted defense. He played within himself. He looked for his receivers that were close and otherwise didn't make any mistakes. He threw it out of bounds when he needed to. He didn't throw into any double coverages that were super obvious, so he did everything he could. As far as playmakers go, really the ball down the field to Tate was about the only one that I thought made a huge splash. Everything else was very controlled, very limited, and did what was expected of the team at any given time. I would say that there was no flashes of brilliance, no Travion Henderson breaking one open, no special players on offense, but Carnell Tate and his catch in the end zone was spectacular. It showed a lot of great effort, a lot of concentration. I mean, it was a good pass. It was a little underthrown, but I thought just marginally enough that he felt like he had to go up for it as opposed to staying planted, but everything worked perfectly. So I don't think there's anything to really be overly worried about. I think this first game was we're going to play within what boundaries we know, and we're just going to do what we can to stay safe with the ball, stay safe with our play calling, and not give the other team momentum by turning it over or making bad calls. Instead, they relied on the defense. And that is a way to go play. That's trestle ball. We're going to run the ball as effectively as we can and just try to get first down after first down. I really saw this on the running touchdown. That 4 runs right up the middle over and over and over. The transfer running back, CJ Donaldson, he's the transfer from West Virginia. I thought he ran the ball effectively. There was no push that he couldn't accomplish. He pushed into the defensive line time and time again and showed that he could pick up those hard-earned 2 to 3 yards. I didn't see anything super explosive. I didn't see him make a cut that was particularly noticeable, but he just showed that he was willing to put his body on the line and push that line forward, which is sometimes all you need to win these games. He would turn a 2 or 3 yard run into a 5 yard run sometimes. But for the most part, the vaunted Texas defensive line definitely held, definitely prevented any big plays from the running game. The wide receivers with Jeremiah Smith, he dropped a couple passes early. Seemed like after the long pass that never happened to him on that 4th down that went to the tight end instead, kind of got in his head a little bit and he had to recollect himself. But then he got his normal form back. Julian Sane, solid, unflinching, threw good passes, made good decisions, had tight spirals on all of the passes, so the receivers had more than ample opportunity to make solid grabs. And sometimes that's all you can ask from a quarterback who's never played at this level, He's in over 100,000 fan stadium against the number one team, and I think he did a great job. Now, I want to see growth. I want to see him make better decisions. On that last drive, where right before Texas got one more chance, he could have done a little bit more to run the ball to try to run out the clock, but instead he threw it away, which is fine. That's kind of what the coaches get in his ear about is don't take any negative plays, throw it away. But you kind of have to be aware of the clock sometimes and think, hey, if I just run this ball and I get tackled inbounds, it's going to run out a lot more of this clock and prevent them from having another timeout that they could use. That's definitely nitpicking. For the most part, he had solid play, command of the offense, definitely did a good job of noticing what the defense was bringing at him. He was aware of pressures. He didn't just stand there like a statue. He definitely moved around, tried to get outside of the box so that he could look down the field more. But at the end of the day, he didn't have any turnovers. He made smart decisions, and he definitely walked away with a big win. And sometimes that is going to build the confidence you need to go play later, like at Michigan or into the playoffs. And that's all you can ask. As far as the playmakers, I thought everybody that showed up today was really solid. There were no like standout aha moments like this is when we're going to get started. But again, Texas is predicted to be a number one defense, at least top 5 in the country. And for their first game, they definitely brought it. They had that defense wall up front that a lot of big plays. Secondary played really strong, close on everybody. There was a lot of bracket coverage on Jeremiah. So, he had to do a lot of push-offs or a lot of things to try to make himself open so that Julian felt safe throwing him the ball. The checkdowns were really smart. I thought a lot of the tight end play was solid, although I would have liked to see a little better blocking out of the tight ends. There was a lot of pulling tight ends in order to try to get space for the running back. I think at the end they had to bring in additional help to push the door opens for the running back to really make some gains in the second half. And that was a good correction by the coaching staff. But as a whole, I thought the offense was solid. I thought everybody played within what they knew and just pushed as hard as they could against a great team like Texas. So that was definitely smart. All right, let's move on to the second quarter. Special teams, special players definitely seemed like everybody was on the same page. Kickoffs were deep, they were really well covered. I believe there was one that made it back to the 40-yard line. That was brought back by, I think, a non-call, and so that would have been one of their bigger kickoff returns. But for the most part, kickoff returns were really well covered, kicked nice and deep, and just prevented overall good returns. And that's all you can really ask on kickoffs. As far as punts, I thought they were well positioned on the field. There was one muffed punt that felt like it didn't go nearly as far as it should have. I think it ended up only being like a 15 to 20-yard punt. It went out of bounds earlier than what was expected. But for the most part, the punter was put in a lot of awkward positions against the goal line, against a good team like Texas, and they pulled off a fantastic punt after punt, 50, 55, well positioned, hard to return. In a game like this, those little things can make a big difference. It definitely showed. We kept them on their half of the field for the most part on the punting game. And with a good team like Texas, I think that Texas offense is going to turn around and be really, really good. I think Arch just had a bad day. I think it was just a lot of pressure on him, all these commercials and things. So just keeping them on the other half of their field for the most part with the punt game really made a big difference. As far as our return game, we didn't have any big returns. We didn't have any noticeable breakaways. I think for the most part, we did fair catches on almost everything. And I think that was a goal for the team was just like, let's get the ball caught. Let's not let anything bad happen on these returns, and we'll go from there. So I like to see going forward to give some of these great wide receivers and some of these secondary players that have great speed an opportunity to catch and return to see what we can change because the return game for Ohio State has been abysmal for a while. Like we've had a couple good ones, but nothing that was consistent and brought great like yardage gains or even touchdowns. So the return game was basically a non-starter. Kicking game for field goals, we only had those 2 extra points and no field goal tries. So hey, Fields did a great job, went through the uprights, and that's what you can always hope for. Third quarter, the defensive stands. Like the defense showed up, showed strong. I thought Matt Patricia really called a great game. Other than in the fourth quarter, with a couple minutes to go, Texas pulled out all the stops, and there was a little bit of confusion. There were a couple times where I felt like the defense didn't know what was going on at that point. But for the majority of the game, the defense was solid. Everybody looked like they knew their positions. They knew where to rally to the ball. They knew not to be confused by some misdirections. And that is what you hope for every year. I thought compared to the Knowles era, this felt more like everybody just get to the ball wherever it's at. And if there is a misdirection, reverse field and get there as quickly as possible. Obviously, we have some really special people on defense that made that happen. Igminosa, there's Caleb Downs. But the linebacking core was really the unit on the defense that was everywhere all at once. They showed up where they needed to be every single time. They brought aggression, they brought a lot of fierce tackling, and they kept themselves controlled so that they didn't lose who they were going after. A lot of times you saw over pursuits where if somebody cut back, they just couldn't get to them in years past. But this time, this season, so far, especially against a good team like Texas, I thought they did a good job. The running game did have some gains, but I thought it was always corralled rather quickly. And so there was nothing giant explosive as far as the run game was concerned. But there were several 10, 15-yard gains, but it was always corralled, brought back in line, and stopped. Especially goal line stands. That goal line stand was like a concrete wall. I mean, they just ran themselves into it time and time again. Other than a long pass, there was no scoring coming from anybody on that Texas team. Even that touchdown was a little questionable due to how he caught the ball and the rollover and switching hands. I think that's going to be one of those things going forward that we can count on is that the defense is going to bend maybe a little bit, but for the most part, I don't think we're going to break. I think there's enough people left that played last season, maybe weren't starters, but definitely played that can bring a lot of grit and toughness into that front seven. But at the same time, it's good to see some of these younger players get time out on the field and learn how to have that strength in the middle to prevent, being pushed around. Now, going forward, will we see another offense as good as the one we face today? Yeah, there's going to be a couple teams in the Big Ten, but I think for the most part, we're not going to see a big gash from running backs unless we see somebody who's a top 5 running back. Texas did have some great running backs, and they definitely made a lot of opportune runs, but we kept it corralled, and that was really thanks to the secondary. Secondary brought a lot of pressure up into the box and prevented those runs. And at the same time, they prevented Manning from getting clean looks down the field. And you can't ask for much more than that. I felt like the linebackers were the key stars. They were everywhere all at once. And then the secondary just took care and muffled out anything that got past anybody else. I thought everybody played their hearts out and really locked down the Texas offense. Didn't give them a lot of opportunity to do a lot of trick plays. The motions that they did use were very minimal, so there wasn't a lot of confusing elements for the defense to have to control. So that'll be simply something we look forward to when we play other teams to see if Matt Patricia's defense can handle misdirection, because that has been a history for him of having eyes that look in the backfield and then miss players that go swinging side to side. I thought everybody played their hearts out. There was a lot of passion on the defense. They didn't want to give up the big plays. They didn't want to give up the fourth downs. Texas went for a lot of fourth downs, and that put a ton of pressure on them. I think there was 4 fourth down plays that got stuffed by the defense out of a total of 7. That's passing in my book. That's why they won the game, because it could have very easily been a tied game at the end. Arvell Reese definitely brought the passion today. I would say, as far as the defense is concerned, he was the MVP. He was full of passion, full speed to the ball. Every time you saw him, he was just playing with as much energy and passion and just like hitting everything with abject terror. Sonny Styles definitely played great as well, but Arvell was just like on another level. I want to see more pressure put on the quarterback to prevent them, but this Texas offensive line were big, strong, and they have some of the best players on tackles. So I would like to see in the future people like CJ Hicks getting more into the backfield on that second to last play. He got some pressure to the quarterback, and that definitely made a difference in how those passes went. And you can just see the difference. So if we can get more of that, more pressure in the backfield, you're going to see these quarterbacks get those happy feet and try to make better decisions while moving out of the pocket. And that only benefits the secondary. I think as a total unit, the defense was the MVP for the game. Arvell Reese, as far as the linebacking core, which I said was the heart of everything that happened today, he definitely brought everything to bear on that Texas offense, which we know is going to be really good. I want Texas to walk out of this game with their head held high because I want to see them win out the rest of their conference. I want to see them make fools out of the SEC. I can't wait to play them again. Like when both of us have had some time with all of our players to get better, I want to see them in the playoff. I think that was a great game, and I think it bodes well for both teams going forward. I don't expect Texas to fall at all, if not like from 1 to maybe 3, and we swap spots with them. But for the most part, I thought the defense definitely won the day. All right, on to the fourth quarter. Coaches huddle. Man, I thought the coaches played it smart. This game could have gone either way. You could definitely see that in the fourth quarter. For the most part, both coaching staffs from Texas and Ohio State just was very safe. They wanted to run the ball, they wanted to throw short, they just wanted to give all of these young players a chance to go out there and play smart and not make a mistake. And so you saw that in the play calling. There was a lot of pulling guards, pulling tight ends, second halfbacks, or a secondary player in the backfield in order to open up holes. They definitely knew they were playing against top quality defenses. They didn't want to give up anything big as far as turnovers or just bad sacks. We definitely saw that the Ohio State defense played and listened to the script and did everything they could. And then you saw the coaches handling the offense very safely. And I thought all the coaches that dealt with the offense, Brian Hartline and Ryan Day and all the others, did a great job of telling everybody 2 hands on the ball, look for the open person. If it's not there, throw it away. If not, run out of bounds. Let's not make a mistake. Against a team like Texas, that's what you have to do in order to win the game. Not make mistakes, not turn the ball over, and just play solid. I thought it was an interesting call when they got down to the goal line to run the ball 4 times in a row. It wasn't CJ Donaldson 4 times, but between him and Peoples, I thought they did a good job of just picking up the few yards they needed each time. And on that fourth down call, I for sure thought they were going to pass to the outside, roll Sand out, and just have him throw a short pass. Did not do that. Instead, they ran it up the middle again with Donaldson just being strong enough to push himself into the end zone. It could have gone either way. So as far as the coaching call goes, we'll have to see, if other teams start to see that as a weakness. I hope we've evolved in that time frame and are able to look around at these other defenses in the Big Ten and tell ourselves, like, we got to open up the playbook. But for this game, I understand that they had to play in a particular way to secure a win, and they did everything they had to do in order to do that. So definitely coaches made the right call. Going for it on that fourth down, making that run happen, relying on that big offensive line of ours, and just saying, look, pick up that touchdown because we can do that. And it shows an evolution for Ryan Day and his coaching staff. He's brought in people who didn't stay long, and he's had to make calls left and right. And you could see this year that he's trying to play smarter and not make a lot of big calls without reassurances. So what I mean by that is first half played small ball, passes only between the hash marks, not deep, and just keeping the safe plays happening. And then the really big pass to Tate was something that was just beautiful, because I was sitting there all game up until that point saying they have to open up the deep pass. Otherwise, Texas is just going to keep crowding the box further and further. And they finally did it. Now, they couldn't do anything after that because they were up by 2 scores and they didn't want to make a mistake. They played a little more conservative through the rest of the game. It didn't feel like they needed to do anything more because the defense was playing so strong. But you could tell Ryan Day has definitely made the decision that no matter who his assistant coaches are, they're going to play consistent football. And his consistent football just is solid quarterback play, run the ball, push that offensive line to be strong and smart, and then use your tight ends where you need them. I hope we see more passes to the tight ends to alleviate some of the pressure on some of the wide receivers going forward. I thought we would see more of that this game, but the tight ends had a couple of catches, but for the most part were very quiet for this game, I thought. Now, will we see that going forward? Maybe, that guy out of Purdue is really strong. He seems to have good hands. He dropped that first fourth down pass in the first quarter, but for the most part, you could see the talent and the expectations for him are very high. So we'll see what we get out of that. As far as the end of the game, I thought there were a lot of interesting calls that could have gone either way. Clock management was really close, and you can see that is also an evolution for Ryan Days. He's gotten really smart at the end of the games to try to run out the clock and pay more attention to that. Now, that definitely slowed down how the offense functions, and I think that's interesting because in years past, he would have said, hey, let's push it, let's try to do something interesting down the field. But, with Julian being a young kid who's just starting his first big game, the calls were, hey, let's play it safe. If it's not there, throw it away. Like over and over and over, that's what everybody talked about. And that's what they needed to do. The defense played strong enough to get them the win. And that's part of the in-game management is run the clock out. If you have to give it back to them, tell the defense, don't give up. Like whatever happens, don't let them score. Just keep it in bounds. Keep the clock moving. That puts a lot of pressure on the opposite team's offense to try to make those calls that are going to get them down the field as quickly as possible. And we saw how that put a lot of pressure on Manning today as he was trying to push that ball down the field as quickly as possible. And with the clock running out, he just could not control himself on some of those passes. And the defense definitely showed him enough stress that he just made some bad passes. There were a couple times where a pass was slightly behind, pass was slightly too hard, a pass was slightly too high. And those were enough mistakes by their offensive team for ours to just play safe. Now, it's not always going to be the case. I think if we don't go out and start putting more points on the board, we're going to have to play a stronger hand later in the games. But as far as this game is concerned, number one, opening game, everybody's new. Like, we sent 14 players to the NFL. We had to bring in some people through the transfer portal. We had to get some of our younger players right out onto the field. I think the coaches played the game perfectly. You couldn't ask for a better ending as far as a fan perspective because we wanted the win, but we at the same time didn't want to give away the win. And when it was 14-0, I thought the game was in the bag. But Texas definitely pulled some tricks out on their coaching staff's end and definitely tried to push us to the brink. That pass in the end zone was the only thing that really worked for them all day. There was a couple of passes down the seams that worked out for them, but for the most part, they just played center and front for Arch to be able to make those passes as effectively as he could. Boy, was it a good game at the end. I was on pins and needles. I didn't know what to expect. All right. So, extra points. This is kind of the wrap up. This is where we're going to talk about what did we see from the team as a whole, and we're going to talk about our rising star of the game. So, I thought for the team as a whole, because every season's new and you always see different things when college football starts, because you don't have a lot of returning players. You're always kind of introduced to what the team's composition is going to look like. And I thought for the most part, there was true grit and unselfish play. And you saw this on offense, defense, special teams. Everybody just wanted to go out there, fight as hard as they could, look the other team in the eye, and just say, I am not going to beat myself. I am going to stand up to you. I'm going to stand up for my fans, and I am going to play the game that my coaches have taught me. And nobody tried to really go too crazy. I thought at the beginning when Jeremiah Smith flipped his helmet off and was kind of cussing at people because he was open down the field, I was a little worried because that's not what you need. You need somebody who's going to be able to come back and say, hey, I was open, throw me the ball next time. I'll make it happen for us. But after that and his couple drops, like it seemed like he calmed down and he started to play the position that he knows he can play. So I believe the coaching staff probably sat him down and said, here's what you need to do. And he showed a lot of unselfishness by coming back into the game after those drops and just making consistent catch after consistent catch. But yeah, I thought as a whole, every unit showed a lot of grit. You know, there was a lot of punts that could have gotten blocked. They were close, but I thought the special teams held the line and gave the punter just enough time to get the ball down the field. I thought the same thing for the offensive line, protected Julian as well as any other unit out there could have against such a great defense. I thought there was just this sense on the sideline that we are good enough to beat this team that everybody says is number one. They weren't going to give up. A lot of that comes from the fans. There was a lot of feeding off of the fans. The coaching staff after the game definitely brought that up in the interviews, saying like, hey, we felt it. We felt the pressure from the fans, the loudness, and we brought everything we could in order to win the game. And it shows. Like these were two top three teams for sure. When we get to the playoffs, I think we're going to see them again. So I hope next time we bring the same grit and unselfishness that we need in order to win these tight, close games. We've got Penn State, we've got Michigan, we got other great teams in the Big Ten that we're going to have to play this year. And we're going to have to bring that grit on the road as much as we brought it here today in the stadium. My rising star of the game for this week, and every week we'll have a different one. So you can't be a rising star 2 weeks in a row. But my rising star was Jeremiah Matthews Jr. He had an interception. He had several breakups. He did allow the score in the end zone, but I thought he fought really hard on that play and forced the Texas receiver to make a tough catch in order to get that touchdown. So he is my rising star of the game. I thought everywhere you looked, he was there, he was loud, he was showing that, you're not going to push us around, the receivers aren't going to run by us, we're going to be on top of you every single time. He played with a lot of hands, but he didn't get called for a lot of defensive holding. I think that is a big step up for us. Caleb Downs played really great. They have to play within the normal parameters of what Matt Patricia is calling. And I thought they did that. Lorenzo Styles played really great in the secondary, but Matthews Jr., he played outstanding. Like that interception was well timed. He kept his eyes on the ball. He made sure he caught it. Those were really smart plays from him. And I think as a whole, when you step back and later in the season and you have to say, hey, how did Ohio State's game against Texas go? Was it just a lucky win? I think you can't be on that bandwagon for very long if you really pay attention to what happened in the game. The defense played strong. The offense didn't make mistakes, and the special teams were solid. So I think as building blocks for what the rest of the season is going to hold, I think that's all you can ask for when you play number one at home, opening day. Lee Corso retired, picked the Buckeyes to win on his way out the door. And I feel like the fans and the players and the coaching staff delivered. It was a great experience. The Buckeyes won. Like, that's what you hope for every opening season. And they continue their streak with opening season wins. Not only is it just like any other team, it is better because they played the number one team in the nation for bragging rights. So now our Buckeyes are going to be number one. Well, that's it for this week's episode of Buckeye Rising. Thanks for tuning in and rising with me. We'll be back next week for the breakdown on the game against Grambling State. It's going to be 3:30 in the afternoon on BTN. That's 3:30 Eastern. It'll be 2:30 Central. Until then, OHIO, go Bucks.